Welcome to Elevate, the masterclass where we dissect the elements of exceptional achievement and lifestyle design with a focus on personal growth and real estate investing. Now, here's your host, Tyler Chesser.
Elevate Nation, welcome back. This is Tyler Chesser. I'm so thankful to have you here, and I'm blessed and grateful to be sitting with Kent Clothier today. Kent is a real estate veteran and a massive force in the real estate industry, an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs. I know you're really going to love this show today. You're going to love this episode. You're going to love this conversation. And I want to welcome you back because it's time to take it to another level. Are you ready to do so? I know that I am. I want to welcome you back to the show where we sit down for mind-expanding conversations with influential authorities in real estate, as well as top experts in other industries and disciplines. This is for leaders, entrepreneurs, and real estate investors who have a burning desire for the extraordinary. And of course, we are going to distill that extraordinary today, right? We're going to identify and apply how the best of the best raises the bar personally and professionally to achieve not only greatness in real estate, but beyond, right? Beyond, and creating great outcomes in their own life and in the lives of others around them, creating a legacy, doing big things. We're going to distill that mindset, those habits, routines, systems, tools, strategies, and so much more from an individual like Kent Clothier so that you can apply those to yourself, to your own life. Because like my coach says, if you spot it, you got it, right? Because you can apply anything that you hear on Elevate, and you can apply that to your business, you can apply that to your life, and you can take it to the next level. You know, one of the things that my business partner, Brian Flaherty, says all the time is steal shamelessly and improve. And of course, it's not about plagiarism. It's about finding what works, right? Because there's a lot of success that you can model because success leaves clues. And that's what we want to do here is we want to get those clues. We want to tease those out for you so that you can really elevate to the next level. This is a masterclass for leaders and those looking to achieve uncommon results and purposeful outcomes through personal growth, through personal mastery, through real estate investing, other ventures, most importantly, and ultimately in their lives. If you're enjoying Elevate, we are so thankful to hear that. First of all, if you're loving this, thank you. First of all, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing to Elevate. If you have not subscribed already, just go ahead and hit that subscribe button now. And because we're going to continue to bring the heat, we're going to continue to bring massive value on this podcast. And if you're enjoying this, give us a rating and review. It is very helpful for us, and it's something that we certainly appreciate. It's almost like the fee, right? The fee that we ask for you to be here. It doesn't have anything to do with money. We don't want money. In fact, this is 100% for free. We don't charge anything for you to listen to this or watch this. All we do is we ask you to pay it forward and share this with a friend. So who is one person that would really benefit from listening to this podcast? Share this podcast with them. You can either copy the link, you can screenshot, you can do whatever, but it's really, really easy to share this with a friend. So go ahead and do that right now. That's your fee. If you've already done so previously, thank you. We ask that you continue to share with your network, whether that's on social media, whether you post it on your Instagram stories, whether you post that on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, you name it. We invite you to share this with your network or just one person. So that's really the only fee that we ask for you. And with all that said, let's dive in because we've got an amazing episode today. Kent Clothier is a real estate veteran, and he is also the founder and CEO of Real Estate Worldwide, which is a multi-faceted real estate education company with a headquarters in La Jolla, California. And Clothier has become one of the industry's most respected and influential thought leaders. The Real Estate Worldwide educates and empowers customers using a curriculum steeped in an award-winning and proven real estate systems used by Clothier and his team. Real Estate Worldwide operates 3 core business units: the Real Estate Worldwide Academy, an online real estate training platform with 12 core courses; Smart, an online marketing platform that enables real estate professionals to access big data to create lead lists for buyers, sellers, and private money; and finally, Real Estate Worldwide operates an exclusive private mastermind for more than 150 real estate professionals that meet quarterly called the Boardroom Mastermind. Before Real Estate Worldwide, Clothier was part of Memphis Invest, a family-run real estate company based in Memphis, Tennessee. Today, Memphis Invest is one of the largest real estate investment companies in the country, having bought and sold more than 5,000 residential investment properties with another 1,000 planned for the coming year. So with all that said, really, really excited to dive in with this amazing conversation with the great and the powerful Kent Clothier. Kent, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, brother. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And it's always a pleasure to have another bald brother with me. So that's the first, that's the first thing. I ran into somebody today and I'm like, we stick together, right? We just look at each other. We know that,
That's exactly right.
That's awesome, man. Well, welcome to the show. Tell me a little bit more about yourself, kind of behind the public image, behind the bio and all the things that you've done and what you're known for. But who is Kent Clothier as a man?
First and foremost, I'm probably a guy that is just like everybody else, trying to figure out how the world works, how to make things happen, how to create the most out of every moment. I'm extremely focused on my family. I'm extremely focused on collecting moments, collecting, these memories versus going out and collecting a bunch of crap, right? I'm very, very focused on creating businesses that allow me to live the life and do the things and create the impact that I want to create. I would probably say I'm a little more intentional with my time and my energy than most people are, but that doesn't make me any better or any worse. It just makes me a little more experienced.
Yeah, no, that's really powerful. And one thing that I know that you're about that really aligns with me as well is that you say that you're living a life according to design rather than default. So could you expand upon that thought?
Yeah, I've had several experiences in my life. I just turned 51 here a couple of days ago, or yesterday, in fact. And I can tell you that, but I've been in business for the better part of a little over 30 years. And throughout all that time, I've trials and tribulations and what have you, the ups and downs, natural stuff that we may or may not get into in this conversation. But I've definitely learned to appreciate that you get a choice and you get to decide either by not participating in the choice or by being very active in the choice. Both of those decisions play a very pivotal role on where your life goes and what you get to do on a day-to-day basis and how much enjoyment and satisfaction and fulfillment you get. Most people, unfortunately, go through life and they're extremely passive, right? They've been conned by whether it is friends, family, media, environment, circumstances, whatever the case may be. They've got conned into believing that success or having an extremely fulfilling life just isn't it's not their destiny, and so they just kind of fall into a very, very passive existence, very, very survival mentality versus a mentality that I've come to appreciate. That when you grab on with both reins and you decide what you want life to look like, and you move with intention and move with purpose, and I'm not talking about making moves that are drastic, mind-numbing moves on a daily basis. I'm talking about little pivots every day, but moving towards a very specific destination that ends up being, at least in my humble opinion, a much more fulfilling experience, because not only are you ultimately working towards what you want, but you're learning a heck of a lot about what it takes to be a powerful person throughout the journey, throughout the process.
Yeah, and I love the way that you presented that in terms of little pivots every day. It doesn't have to be, you're not like climbing Mount Everest every single day, because that makes it not only more approachable, but it also kind of makes it more real, and you can break it down to any moment, and it's about those decisions. But I'd be curious if we could take it back a step further. Could you talk about where your relentless drive really comes from? Like, where does that come from to the core? Is there anything you'd speak to there, Kent?
Well, I was born into an entrepreneurial family, so I've watched my father in the grocery industry my whole life, my childhood, and then I was raised inside of the grocery business. Ultimately started a business with my father when I was 17 years old that turned into a very, very large organization. Ultimately, he retired when I was 23, and then I took it over, and through a lot of different moves, strategic and acquisitions, et cetera, ended up turning it into a $1.8 billion annual sales organization based out of Boca Raton, Florida. And did all that by the time I was 30 years old. And I can tell you that was it's amazing it was an amazing journey because it certainly helped to open up what was really possible, right? From the time I was 17 till the time I was 30, I don't know that I ever really had a failure. Anything that I would classify as, any kind of knockout punch. Now, subsequently I got a knockout punch right after I turned 30 for the next 2 years and suffered worse than I would ever want anybody else to suffer, losing basically the marriage and the business and the friends and the family, and burned the whole thing to the ground. But I can tell you that when you understand what's really possible, it has a way of exciting the imagination. And it's as we've often heard, success breeds success. Momentum is very powerful. Celebrate all wins. We are chemically designed that when we get that adrenaline rush, that dopamine hit, that thing that just ignites that fire inside of us, and we feel in that excitement, and then we actually see the results from following that burning desire, and see how we can actually kind of bend the universe to our will. That's a pretty difficult thing to deny from that point forward. And so although you're definitely going to get hit, you're definitely going to get faced with a lot of, like I said, trials and tribulations, and get knocked down a lot, and you're not always going to be successful. Once that fire has been lit, it's extremely challenging to ever put out. Right? You may deny it for a little while. You may go sit around and feel sorry for yourself a little while when things get tough, but sooner rather than later, in my experience, you just can't deny it. It's just who you are. It's in your DNA at that point, and you want it, and you want it as bad as anything else you've wanted in your life.
And I'm sure that if you looked back on that pain and of that failure that you experienced, back when you were 30 years old or what have you, and, all the things that you lost and all the challenges that you went through, maybe you look back now and say that there were gifts in that challenge. I'd be curious if there are any things that you'd point back to say, hey, it was absolutely happening to me. I'm sorry, it was happening for me, not to me. Is there anything that you would say to that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's very challenging when you're in those difficult times to understand why something like that is happening. It's very challenging to own the decisions and ultimately the outcomes that you've created. That you can't really see it when you're in it like that. When you gain some distance and perspective 20 years later, and you look up and you're like, well, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I certainly wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have two amazing daughters. I wouldn't have an amazing life. I wouldn't live the way I am without having gone through that very humbling experience, right? The way I would describe it is it's really hard to appreciate the light without the dark. And so I'm very, very thankful for having gone through that, because it taught me that I wasn't anywhere near as good as I thought I was. I needed to be humbled. I needed to get my ego in check. I needed to experience some loss in my life. And I'm very grateful for it now, because as I start to go through things and run into challenging situations, which inevitably always come, there's a part of me that always knows, kind of in the back of my head, this isn't going to kill me. I know I got it. I may not have it all figured out yet, and I may not know exactly what the lesson is here. I may not know exactly how this is all going to turn out, but one thing's for sure, I ain't going anywhere, baby. Like it's time to buckle down and just get it figured out. And so that's a huge gift, because I think that a lot of people, especially when they get into business, they're very delusional, right? They believe in whether it's a product of social media, whether it's a product of, I don't know what it is, the celebrity CEO factor, but they see the end product. They don't necessarily see all of the sleepless nights and all of the lost money and all of the flirting with bankruptcy and all the pain that goes along the way. And, you think about, if you've ever read Elon Musk biography, or you can just, you can basically go Google it, and you can see how many times this guy was within days, if not hours, of bankruptcy in several of his organizations. You can go read, about Bezos, and the same thing. Like, we see the end result now, and it's easy to project success on it. But when you're in that battle and you're fighting, that relentless pursuit, that relentless drive is really, really hard to teach somebody, if at all. And so having, that's something that you've got inside of you. You just got this faith. You just know you're going to keep going. This isn't going to kill me. If it does knock me down, I'm still going to keep going. And more times than not, that works out. New entrepreneurs, that's a really powerful thing that they have to recognize very early, that you don't just get to show up and, win the Super Bowl. You got to go through all the struggles. You got to get hit. You got to get knocked down. You got to entertain your worst fears. You're going to have to fire friends. You're going to have to lose money. You're going to have to barely make payroll. You're going to have to, eat ramen noodles for a year. I mean, whatever it is, you're going to suffer, but it's still worth it. And that's how you get to the end result.
Hey guys, just a quick word from our sponsor and we'll be right back to the show. This episode of Elevate is brought to you by CF Capital, and you know how much I love real estate and how it can be a vehicle towards creating any outcome that you want in your life, which is really why we created CF Capital. It's a real estate investment firm that focuses on acquiring and operating multifamily assets that provide stable cash flow, capital appreciation, and a margin of safety for our investors, for our partners, and for the people that we serve. Our team leverages its expertise in acquisitions and management to provide investors like you with superior risk-adjusted returns while placing a premium on preserving capital. Our mission is to provide property investment and asset management solutions to help investors maximize their returns by investing in high-value multifamily communities. Our philosophy is that we can elevate communities together through this process. And I want to invite you to go check out cfcapllc.com because we have a free ebook that's called The Bottom Line, the 10 ways to increase cash flow in an apartment complex. And I want to tell you that this is a value-packed ebook. So I want to invite you to go check that out right now at cfcapllc.com. I think you're going to get a ton of value just from reading this, whether you apply it to your own business or whether you educate yourself further on what it would look like if you invested with CF Capital. So go check that out at cfcapllc.com. Again, that's cfcapllc.com, and enjoy the rest of the show. It's almost like, paying the tuition, right? You have to go through that to get to the other side. And it's so much easier to have this conversation now to look back and say, well, yeah, of course, it was happening for me and not to me. But I know that I'm sure you had to battle your mind, right? You had to battle that internal voice as well as all the people that doubted you and that said, hey,
I'll go ahead and tell you straight up that I was suicidal when I was going through it. I mean, it was
really
as dark as I've ever been in my entire life. And, I've shared that story before, but it was, when you go from making millions and millions and millions of dollars and having never, ever experienced any kind of failure whatsoever and being the rock star inside of a niche industry where I owned, our company owned basically 40% of the market, being at the top of that ladder. And then over the course of 22 months, basically going as far down as you could all go, losing every dollar. By the way, no drugs, no alcohol, nothing like that. This was all just poor business decisions and just tumbling and this snowball effect going, and getting all the way down to the abyss. I mean, that's a very lonely spot. And it is, and when the harder the fall and the farther the fall, the more severe mentally, at least in my opinion, it hits you, right? I mean, when you are at the top of the mountain and suddenly you're at the bottom of the ocean, that's a pretty far fall, and that's a pretty far hill to get back up and start trying to figure out a way to climb back up. And none of that was easy. I can assure you, none of that was. I mean, there was lots of pain, lots of discomfort, lots of entertaining your worst fears for sure. But again, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't just stuck with it and kept going.
Yeah. And what would, if you had to go back, or if you could go back and give your younger self advice, is there anything in particular that you would tell your younger self?
I wouldn't change anything. I'm very grateful look, I was clearly taught to be a really good entrepreneur. I mean, you don't run a $2 billion a year company by the time you're 30 years old by being a clown. So I can't deny that experience of what I went through to get to that point. Equally, I wouldn't be here today if I hadn't lost everything and been forced to start over and forced to get into a new industry and forced to learn a new skill and forced to apply things differently and look at my family and my time and my marriage and all these things very differently. All those things helped to shape me, good and bad, to where I sit here today as a guy that's really proud of the guy I am. I mean, the only probable thing I would potentially tell myself would it be along the lines of investing, understanding sooner the power of compounding interest and the power of making long-term strategic investments that are just uninterrupted compounding interest. Those are really powerful tools that I was never taught as a young man, that I think that as a businessman today, if anybody's listening to this, do yourself a favor and go educate yourself very quickly on how to get into investment vehicles that are uninterrupted, compounding interest, because the clock's going to move regardless. If you go throw, I'll give you a really good example. I'll just pull it up on my calculator here. So this is how passionate I am about this right now. So for somebody that's listening, if you just go put $100,000 and you have it in the bank, and you added $500 a month to it, and it simply earned a measly 10%, which we would never even do a real estate deal that didn't earn more than 20%. So I put in, you're 20 years old, and you just do that, $500 a month. You start with 100 grand, go put it away. It only turns into $17 million.
That's it,
right?
huh?
Yeah. I mean, if you want to get rich, get your money to start working for you. That would be the advice I'd go back to myself. Everything else, I'm extremely grateful for.
Oh, that's awesome. And obviously you have done that, right? You've gotten into real estate. You've gotten into real estate in a very big way. So let's talk about that. And actually, maybe we could retrace the steps. I mean, from the pivot of that failure, because also failure was the feedback that has given you all the tools. And I would imagine many of the tools that you have applied in such a better capacity as you've grown as an entrepreneur, as an investor in all these ways. And maybe I'm making some assumptions there, but let's talk about the pivot. And then let's talk about real estate and the compounding, the never interrupting fashion of the compound effect there. So talk about the pivot, and then we'll go there.
Well, the pivot was that I had no options. I mean, I had burnt every bridge. I had burnt every relationship to the ground in a previous industry, right? So I was left, and I'd never gone to college. So I wasn't in a place, and I was out of money. And so I was in a place where it was pretty black or white for me. Either I had to figure out how to do something else. I knew I was never going to be the guy that was a tradesman, or I just been way too high and understood my potential. That was never going to be me. I wasn't going to be a guy that was out there becoming an electrician or a plumber. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just, I knew that I wasn't going to be that guy where I was mentally. And so I saw a late night infomercial for real estate investing. Didn't know one thing about it. Went down to an event, saw what was going on, got pretty excited about it. Invested $1,000 in the course, quite frankly, $1,000 that I really didn't even have, because I was down to about $4,000 in the bank, and was just motivated enough to apply exactly what I was taught to do. And in a little over 30 days, did my first deal, made $8,000 wholesaling a piece of real estate. And I was off. I mean, I understood fundamentally how to go and create money out of thin air, and which was very similar to what I'd done in the grocery industry. The grocery side of the business I was in was an arbitrage business, so we didn't make anything. I basically bought a truckload over here at a discount, and I sold it over here at a markup, and arranged for the transportation and made money on it. So wholesaling houses was a very similar business model for me. So I gravitated to it very quickly, fundamentally understood exactly what I needed to do, got really good at it, and then over the course of the years, not only did I get good at it from a transactional standpoint, got good at it from a system standpoint. It started I was the first guy to bring data into the world, right? I went out and I introduced a way that I was going and finding cash buyers in markets, and introduced the first cash buyer feed back in 2008, which is very common now, but back then nobody had even heard of such a thing. Did the same thing on how we were figuring out how to find vacant properties. Did the same thing how we were finding private lenders. So I was using data. And by the way, I'm not a software guy. I'm just an entrepreneur. I just would hire people to go take something I was doing manually and now go automate it. And so they were creating these automation tools that ultimately Now, not only am I doing real estate, am I sitting here doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses, but now I've got this software over here that people are wanting to license from me and buy from me. Before I knew it, now I'm in the software business and have tens of thousands of clients that are buying our products and services over here. And then ultimately that led to education and coaching and masterminds. And, it just goes on and on and on. And so now, we have our investing business, REI Nation, that does about 900 transactions a year in 9 markets. Works with real estate investors from all over the world. Basically, we buy the property, we rehab the property, we put a performing tenant in place, and then sell it as a performing asset to an investor, and then stick on and manage that asset for them. So we manage about 7,500 properties, sell about, like I said, 800 to 900 a year, new properties. And then we have our software and education side of our business and training side of our business. So again, we've got, a little over 60,000 students around the world that we provide tools and provide training and provide coaching and all that kind of good stuff too. And then all of this kind of just evolved. None of this was a master plan. It was just designed to look, my unconventional way of approaching the real estate business just happened to produce opportunities for people that they hadn't seen before. I was taking something I'd done in the grocery industry. I was now applying it to the real estate industry, and it created a buzz. It created an opportunity. It created things that people had never seen before. And then from that point forward, I just became very, very passionate about simplify the process. Like, make this attainable, make this easy for somebody. Somebody's sitting out there struggling like I was. Somebody's trying to figure out how to go and make a $5,000 or $10,000 would make a huge difference in their life. Like the $8,000 check that I just done. So I'm extremely passionate about opening doors and waking people up and helping them understand that not only is the opportunity real, but all the tools and technology and training is so accessible today versus when I got started, that not only is it real, it is highly tangible. It is right in front of you. If you will apply yourself, it has never been easier to get into the game.
I love the innovative thinking and the disruptive thinking that you brought from that, from that previous life. And is that where the concept of reverse wholesaling came from? Was that from the grocery?
Exactly right. So I came from the grocery industry. I had done the same thing. Keep in mind, go back and understand that for me to effectively take over this $1 billion company at 27 years old, that was a huge risk that these guys were taking on me. And the reason why they had taken that risk on me when they acquired my company is because I was just so naive to ask the question, well, why the hell does anybody do it this way? I don't get it. Why would we not just do it this other way, right? I was just, call it naive, call it cocky, call it whatever you will. Like, we're highly inquisitive when we're young, right? When we get all that stuff is slapped down by friends and family and environment and media, and like, don't ask questions, just do what you're told, right? And I was just always encouraged to keep asking questions. And so out of that came a new business model, a business model that when I took over the business was doing $800 million a year, and in less than 3 years was doing 1.8 billion. So $1 billion idea was, how about we just go ask our customers what they want to buy, how much they want to pay for it, where they want us to deliver it to, how many they can buy, how fast do they need it? Like, get all the information, and then won't we just go work backwards from there? Because if I know that this guy wants to buy 100 trucks of Charmin tissue, my life gets infinitely easier to go create that opportunity than for me to go try to find one of 40,000 items in a grocery store and say, hey, do you want this? 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 Just tell me what you want, and then let me go the other direction. And so, we brought that same philosophy into real estate wholesaling specifically. Nobody ever heard of such a thing. But now, hundreds of thousands of transactions later and tens of thousands of students later, I'd say that it's been proven to be a wildly successful business model.
I love that. I love the question and how really simple it is. It's like, well, why do we have to do it that way? Or why is it done that way? And really, questioning conventional wisdom, because there's so much conventional wisdom out there that's no longer relevant, right? Let's challenge authority. Let's challenge the way that we do things, right? How much
the real estate space has changed in the last 5 years alone.
Totally.
Just the last 5 years. It is completely different. So let's just go back 10 years. When the recession hit, hedge funds weren't buying houses. right? That's
No.
part of the reason why we had the foreclosure glut, is because there was no way to get through all these houses, right? So hedge funds weren't buying. Open door offer pads, Zillow, all the iBuy, none of that existed. None of the kind of technology exists where you could easily go on and find cash buyers, find private lenders, find, distressed properties from your phone or from your laptop, from your none of that existed. So in 10 years, just those are three really profound examples of how dramatically the market has changed. So if you're not evolving with it and asking those questions, then you are a dinosaur. You're already dead, baby. You just don't even know it. You're extinct. You gotta get in the game.
That's so true. And I've been in the business for 8 years myself, and I can tell you that it's vastly different today than it was then. And, it continues to just compound on itself. It changes more rapidly. It accelerates. It grows faster. And so I think that is the key, for at least that I've seen, is that evolution, constantly challenging yourself and saying, hey, what worked yesterday or what got me here will not get me there. And so, with all that said, Kent, I mean, I'd love to know from you, what are you seeing as some of the greatest opportunities in today's market and maybe the next few years? I mean, what are you seeing in terms of real estate as being the greatest opportunities?
Well, I can tell, I'll just define it with my own actions, right? So I am intently focused on seller finance, creating seller finance notes. Fannie Mae recently announced that in their projections for the year 2021, they are projecting to originate $1.4 trillion less in loans than in 2020. So 2020, they did 4.1. In 2021, they're going to do 2.7. So $1.4 trillion by Fannie Mae's estimates is going to get yanked out of the market. Now, at the exact same time that that's going on, because all we're hearing about is, the greatest rates you've ever heard. Well, the people that, and the way Fannie's doing this is the only people that can get those rates are the very best borrowers on the planet. And certainly only if they're buying their primary. If you're trying to buy an investment property, forget about it. And if you're self-employed, you own your own business, forget about it. Right now, the regulations are that they announced, or the guidelines that they announced, were you have to provide 2 years of audited financials for every LLC you own. So it isn't something that's being widely published, but just go try to get a loan if you're self-employed. And let me tell you, on an investment property, let me know how that works out for you. Because it is a brutal process. Now, if you get out on the other side of it and you provide all that data, then you're better than most. The reality of most people just won't do it. And so that creates this massive gap, huge gap. So the market's going to stay steady in the number of units sold, the number of dollars sold, if not inch up a little bit, but the amount of funding that is going to be provided by Fannie Mae will be $1.4 trillion less. There's your opportunity. Stepping in, buying houses, acquiring them, turning around and selling them with seller financing in place, all Dodd-Frank compliant, all being handled by third-party servicers, all of that, super compliant, great paper. Putting that situation in place is a massive opportunity, because if you can sit there and get, in theory, just if you can buy a house for, I'll just take something across the Midwest. You can buy a house for $60,000 or $70,000 and without touching it, turn around and go sell it for $120,000, $130,000, demanding a premium because you're providing the financing. And if you're charging 7% interest on that loan, which Dodd-Frank says you can go all the way up to about 9.5%, depending on the borrower. Charge 7% interest on that. Well, think about it. If I bought it for 70 and I sell it for 140, and I'm making the borrower put $14,000 down, 10%, right? So I'm really financing $126,000 for him. His 14 goes against my 70 that he put down on it. So now I owe 56 and I'm financing 126. I'm making 7% on the original amount I purchased because I'm loaning that to it, but I'm also making 7% on the spread. That's a 14% return on your money. And oh, by the way, that note is 30 years. So imagine for a minute, like getting 14% interest on a note on a $70,000 investment, or it's not even 70, it's 56,000. A $56,000 investment, getting 14% interest for 30 years. You do enough of those, you'll just get really, really rich. I promise you.
That's
compounding. That is uninterrupted, passive, compounding interest.
Yeah.
Versus rentals, because people are like, oh, it's a great market for rentals. And well, look, here's the problem with rentals. You have the risk. whether you're looking at Grant talking about multifamily, or you're looking at all these different guys, let me help you understand. The person getting the richest in every one of those deals is the bank, not you. Think about it, right? They're borrowing money at 0.5%, if not cheaper, and they're loaning it to you at 3 to 5%. So they've already, increased. They've already basically got a 300% or 500% return on the money, and you're going to pay them that over 30 years. So it never interrupts. Got problems at the house, like Texas last week, got the pipes burst, the roof gets blown off. That's not the bank's problem. That's your problem, right? And so I've come to appreciate that in the rental game, I'm actively trying to change every one of my rentals into these types of notes, because in the rental game, all the risk is on me. I'm the borrower, right? I'm the landlord. Tenant doesn't pay, house needs to get repaired, whatever the case may be. I'm responsible. Taxes, insurance, whatever. The bank, they don't care about any of that stuff. So I'm in the business now of, hey, I'll be the lender. I'll sell you the house. I want to write the note. You're going to pay me. You have all the responsibilities. I just want to get paid forever.
No, I love it. And I wasn't aware that you could get away with in the marketplace to that degree, those type of interest rates, 7%. I wasn't aware that that was something that you could make happen. So this is your opening. Go ahead.
Yeah, you definitely should educate yourself. There's a lot of possibilities there. It's all based on the borrower, and Dodd-Frank is very, specific what you can and cannot do before it becomes predatory. And at the moment that it potentially gets predatory, there's a almost like a course that the borrower has to go through. If they actually want to borrow the money at a higher rate. In other words, where they say, hey, I clearly understand what I'm doing. This is super, super compliant. This is not predatory. We're not trying to take advantage of it. What we're trying to do is get paid for the opportunity that we're providing. The bottom line is there's a lot of people out there, really good people who are cash rich, who cannot buy a house. But if I can come in and provide them that opportunity at a reasonable rate, and the key to making all that whole thing work is I want my borrower to look around in the neighborhood and see that every house in the neighborhood is renting for $1,000 a month. Well, I'm going to adjust my rate to where they're going to be paying me $900 a month, but they're going to own it. That's what makes that whole thing tick. So the rate will vary when you kind of play with the numbers like that. Sure. But if I can get it to where I'm $100 below any other rent, I tell you what's going to happen is, God forbid they look up and they say, man, I don't want to pay this anymore. They're going to look around at all the other houses and say, wait a minute, if I go, the house across the street's $1,000, I own this and I'm paying $900, chances are they're going to stay.
Yeah, no, that's super powerful. And I think about just it's an evolving strategy, a creative way to, adopt what's going on in the marketplace, create opportunities, right? It's got to be mutually beneficial. But is there anything else that you're looking at in terms of an evolving strategy right now to really capture opportunities that you're applying right now?
Not one thing. Not one
I
thing.
love it.
I mean, the reason I have gotten to where I've gotten, brother, is that I'm a very driven and intentional person, right? I am extremely dialed in on time. I do not believe in wasting 1 minute of one day if I can avoid it. And so, needless to say, you could probably put 10 experts up here in the next 10 days and everybody have a different opinion about what's on the horizon. And I totally appreciate it, and I'm not taking anything away from any of it. But to me, building real wealth and not income there's a huge difference there. A lot of people are enamored with, I just want to go make another $1 million a year. I could care less. I want to go build $100 million in net worth in the next year, and have my great grandkids live off of that for their lives. If you want to do that kind of stuff, then you'd be hard pressed to find something that represents that kind of opportunity in today's environment than what I just shared.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's extremely powerful. And I'll just recommend that everybody listening goes back and listens to that entire section, because there's so much power in that monomaniacal focus that you just described, Ken. So I love that. And Ken, I want to be respectful of your time, because obviously it's extremely important. And, I want to dive into our rapid fire section. We call it the Rare Air Questionnaire. It's all about being uncommon. It's about everything that we've talked about today. And I've just really enjoyed our conversation thus far, but I have a few more questions for you. Sure. If you had to point to, we talked a little bit about education, right? It's about being aware of those opportunities. And obviously you're an educator yourself. I would imagine you also continually, invest in your own learning, from books or podcasts or surrounding yourself in masterminds and such. if you had to point to 2 or 3 of the most impactful books that you've read over the past few years, are there any that come to mind?
Well, the one book that whenever I do a podcast, I only recommend one book. And although I will tell you, I'm a voracious reader, I probably read a book a week. But I think a book that I would say has been the most powerful book for me that I've ever read has been The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I would highly recommend everybody read it. You probably read it in 2 hours. But for somebody that wants to understand, look, you touched on a lot of stuff right there. Here's the reality of it is that most of the people that I run into are overeducated, broke people. They have a lot of knowledge. They understand fundamentally, the way a transaction works or the way business works, or they've gone to school, whatever the case may be. And it's done nothing to enrich their life in any way because they've never taken the actions that were necessary. They never applied the knowledge. They never went and, dared to dream and dared to fight. And so I think that knowledge without a good foundational understanding of what you're really here to do, what you're designed to do, is kind of wasted. In any of my courses, any of my mentoring, any of my masterminds, we spend a great deal of time talking about, how to unlock what's going on inside of you. Because if you don't establish very quickly your purpose and what, like I was talking earlier, ignite that fire, then you're going to be one of those overeducated, broke people. And so The Alchemist is a really good book that kind of has an aha moment where you just sit there like, oh my God, yeah, I've got everything I need. It's inside of me. Like, I just got to go. I got to do this. I got to actually get out of my own way, stop thinking about it, and start being about it. And to me, that's a really powerful lesson that everybody should learn before they do anything else.
I totally agree. And, that's a great book, first of all. So we'll put a link in the show notes, and it's a great lesson that you just shared because, it's a lot of times you listen to a podcast and you say, well, I just need to get that other piece of information, or I just need to read this book, or I need to watch that YouTube video, or I need to go to that conference or what have you. But at the end of the day, maybe there's a fear voice that you're really not listening to and you're not going through. So it's about take action, right? What do you learn and what do you apply? At the end of the day, it's about application. I don't know about you, Ken, but for me, it's like knowledge, that's not power. Like application, experience, results, that's real power. What do you think?
Well, I mean, think about it like this. You brought up podcasts and books and whatever. How insane would I sound, dude, if I said, hey, I've watched every YouTube video, I've listened to every podcast, I've watched, I've read every book on becoming a great MMA fighter, and put me in, baby. Get me in the middle of the ring. Let's do this. I think I'm ready.
Right.
And but people do this all the time when it comes to business and in life. They're like, well, I've gotten enough information out here. None of it matters unless you apply it. I mean, you will never learn anything until you get in the ring. You're going to have to get choked out a few times. You're going to have to get your nose bloodied. You're going to have to get a few black eyes. You're going to have to get, and then what's going to happen is after you get done with that round, you're going to go back to the corner and the coach is going to tell you, you missed this. We work on this technique. Okay, next week, that is what the life of an entrepreneur is really like. When you've got somebody in your corner that's helping you anticipate the punches, but not taking away from the fact that you still got to take the punches. That's how you get to the next level. You're never going to get there by continuing to educate yourself, thinking that there's some elusive finish line here. Now I'm ready to go do something. It doesn't work like that. You've got to get in the game.
Get in the game, my friend. I love it. What's the biggest way that you elevate your life on a daily basis, Kent?
I have conversations like this. I surround myself with extremely powerful people. It's not lost on me that I count people that are friends and colleagues like, Roland Frazier, Jesse Itzler, Ed Milet, Steve Weatherford, Bedros Keuilian, people that Dan Fleischman, Joel Marion, people that I have a ton of respect for and that will be honest with me. And, we are all a product of the people we surround ourselves with. So the things I do on a daily basis is I make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people and conversations and opportunities that matter, not frivolous nonsense. I just don't have time for it. And I won't, and that on top of the fact that if I'm not inside of those conversations, I am 100% trying to be singularly focused on one of two things, either on business and creating impact in the world or on my family, right? I'm very, very diligent about making sure that I understand that the clock is ticking, baby, and it doesn't stop for anybody. And so I'm not gonna sit around and get into superfluous nonsense that doesn't serve me or where I'm not serving somebody else.
That's so good. And I love that you brought up, really just about the people that you surround yourself with. And that's how you elevate your life on a daily basis, because really it leads into my next question, which is, what's the biggest way that you elevate others around you?
The same, right? I take it very seriously that to be somebody that is not afraid to rattle people's cages, not afraid to be very blunt and forthcoming. I might be a little too raw and uncut and uncensored for some likes, but some people. But I can tell you that it all comes from a place of that, not of hostility, but of empathy and wanting people to get to a result as fast as they can, not sit around and get conned into believing that they'll get to it next week, next month, or next year, because that's a very slippery slope. I whether it is through our boardroom mastermind, whether it is through some of the live events we put on, whether it is through some of our coaching programs or Facebook groups or what have you, right? There's an opportunity to create impact almost on a daily basis. You just got to be open to it and understand that your unique experience and your unique wisdom is valuable to somebody. Somebody's looking, and it might be as it might feel silly, but it might be something as subtle as an Instagram story. I posted an Instagram story yesterday about my struggle back in the day, 30 years ago, and my comments just got blown up with people. Hey, I needed to hear this today. This is exactly what I wanted. I'm going through a really dark time. Thank you so much for sharing. So you never know how that's going to manifest, but you got to keep putting yourself out there and just believe that somebody out there needs to hear the information you're willing to share on a daily basis.
Yeah. And Kent, I just want to acknowledge you because you do emanate the fact that, like your tagline, like the time is now, you emanate that because you show up and say, look, let's get to the result. And it's not out of, hey, I'm better than you are, I want to be intense. It's just, you have a desire to bring the best out of people and you want to bring the best out of them as quickly as possible, which is an amazing thing because of what you just said before. You said, look, the time is ticking. My time is ticking. It's not going to be forever. So let's maximize what we have now. And I just appreciate you, man. I really do. I really want to honor you. And this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you taking time. Is there any parting thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd share with Elevate Nation today?
No, I just echo exactly what you just said. I mean, that we live it, we breathe it, and the time is now. Be very, be very stingy with what you've got. It's a very precious resource. It's really the only currency you've got. So use it wisely and use it very in a very intentional and profound way. You have everybody that's listening or watching this has the ability to create massive impact inside of their own lives, but you're not going to get there by checking out and acting like time is on your side. That's extremely irresponsible. It's just not. Just go as fast. I mean, look, as we're sitting here today, think about it. It's kind of sobering, but as we're sitting here today recording this, Tiger Woods was in a car crash yesterday, right? And he's rushing off to go play golf with Drew Brees and somebody else. And, in an instant, his life changed again, right? Completely shattered right leg. And he's going to have all kinds of surgeries, lots of recovery time. Who knows if he'll ever even play golf again. But as they're reporting today, it could have been much worse if he was in a car that didn't have all the airbags and everything around him. It was the type of accident where he probably should have died, but the car was just super safe. My point in sharing that is that, look, that stuff happens every single day, millions of times a day, all over the world. And you get a chance right now. This is the moment. This is the chance. This is that opportunity directly in front of you. This podcast is that. And so to not take something out of this and go and apply it immediately and tell yourself, well, I'll just make notes and I'll come back to it. I'll listen to it later, whatever. That's just, you're acting like tomorrow's promised. You're acting like you're going to be in the same position you are today. And that is just not true. More times than not. More times than you'd ever care to mention. I can tell you that.
Kent, that's an amazing way for us to wrap up today. And it's such a great reminder. My goodness. Thank you for dropping a bomb on us. Thank you for dropping the mic because, man, I'm ready to run through a brick wall. I know Elevate Nation is too. And I want to encourage Elevate Nation to really dive into Kent and what he's doing. Get to know, Kent Clothier and his team. Go to REWW.com. Of course, we'll put links in the show notes of where you can find Kent on all the different social media platforms and what have you. But Kent, my man, what an amazing, amazing afternoon with you, my friend. Thank you so much for being on the show.
You got it, brother. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Absolutely. Elevate Nation, we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Elevate. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to elevate your results by taking immediate action on what you learned. For more, visit elevatepod.com.